All right. So in this video, what I want to do is go over my project and look at it as a whole. So understand, how are all of the different components actually working together? How is the project actually being done? Because what we've been doing in the past, in my previous videos, we've been going through every single file and trying to hyperfixate on every single line of code. So what is this line of code doing? What is that line of code doing? How is this working? How is that working? But we've only been focused on file by file by file by file, but there's a whole bunch of files within the project. So now what I want to do is take a little bit of a higher level look at it and say, okay, great, we've done all of the different individual files. Well, how is everything actually grouped together? What is the project actually supposed to be doing? How is it working? All of these questions. That's what I'm trying to answer in this video. And what I might even be doing is doing a two-part of this video where we have part one, which it's kind of late right now. Well, not really late, but it's 10 o'clock right now. And then I might try to fit as much in my head as I can and then go off to the part two, which will be tomorrow, which is essentially doing the exact same thing. So trying to get another high level view. And the reason why I want to do it that way, why I think I'll probably do it that way, is I definitely believe in the power of the subconscious and being able to give your subconscious something to chew on while it's sleeping. I really like that idea, to be able to either try to put a project in your brain before you sleep, or do some leak code before you sleep, or do something where your subconscious has time to kind of just like process what you are trying to understand. So I'm going to go through this, try to understand how it's working, what's going on, how the different components are put together, and then tomorrow we can start up again and say, okay, let's do the exact same exercise, but with a fresh mind, and then see what we missed and get a more holistic understanding of the actual project. And the reason why I want to do the overview right now is because now that we've written all of the different files, okay, well, now actually it is time to get in and see how those files are interacting. And when we inevitably have all of these errors and compilation errors and the project doesn't work, right? Nothing works the first time. So once we actually get all of those errors, we want to have a understanding of how the data is actually flowing between all of the different components and how the project in its entirety is working, because that's going to help us troubleshoot things a lot. So let's just get started. I'm gonna minimize myself here and let's do it. So we do not need a split screen anymore. We are not in the development portion of things. There we go. All right, we only have one screen. Fine, I'm just gonna clear this all. I just want to get it clean. Clean, I like that. Clean, okay? So, let's go. We have, the first thing that I want to do is, okay, I have my project here. Here it is. So what I want to understand is, okay, so I have my C# project. This is the high level. Now I have the code, which lives in source here. And we've written everything within this bid engine location, okay? The other ones are empty, okay? And we have a Docker Compose. Now this Docker Compose is going to be able to spin up Docker containers. And as of right now, it is going to try to spin up a Docker container for this event consumer and analytics service and ad service, but it's not going to be able to. We know that that's going to be an error. We haven't seen that error yet, but we know that it is going to be an error because if you look here, let's see, go to those services, like this one, analytics service, it's trying to go into analytics service right here and get the Docker file, which doesn't exist. So we're gonna run into that issue. We'll need to figure out how we're gonna do that. We might be able to just create a dummy Docker file, that's what I'm thinking. and see if we're able to mitigate that for the immediate time being. And then later on, once we get into the analytics service portion of this project, then we can build out that more robustly. That's one thing. Okay, so that's kind of how the larger scale project works with kind of the microservice. And I'm putting a question mark because is it actually a microservice? I think by definition it would be, right? Because it is a container. We have one container, and then we are going to have another container, and then we're going to have a third container for ad service, and we're going to have another container for event consumer. So we're going to have all of these containers, and that would count as a microservice. Okay, yes, so it's a microservice here. And from our Docker container, let's look at how that is going to build the bid engine, because that's what we built so far. That's the only thing that we built. All of the others are empty. So from here, we are going to go into the Docker file. And now let's go and also, we're going to put that there, and it's going to get this Docker file right here. Okay, and we're going to get this like base image. We're going to copy over all of our files that are part of the bid engine project. Okay, so now the other thing that I'm seeing is I have my CS proj here. Is CS proj the C# project, or is it here? Like because there's two different levels to this project, and I'm trying to understand how do these two levels interact. So pretty soon we are going to go to ChatGPT and actually ask that question, try to figure out, okay, well, how are these two things actually interacting with each other? But right now I'm just trying to put some stuff in my head and say, okay, well, what don't we quite understand yet? Sip of coffee. Okay, so what don't we quite understand yet? We're copying over source bid engine. Okay, that makes sense. From our host machine to our Docker container, same file structure, right? That is source bid engine. So all of this, right? And then we are doing .NET build, and so this is going to compile that C# project. So it's going to come in here. Let's can I even open that? I don't know if that's an openable. Okay. Oh, this is my dependencies. Oh, okay. So I am going, okay, hold on. I'm trying to articulate it as I'm understanding things. So I'm going to come in here, get my CS proj, right? Then build the .NET project. And I know that I am trying to build a .NET SDK web application. Okay, so I already know, like I've told .NET, this .NET, because it's going to look at this file. And I've told it, like, okay, here we say, hey, we are building a .NET, a web console application. So it knows kind of what to compile, what to build. Then we're saying, okay, we are targeting the .NET 9 and some other implicit using. Okay, so this is just like settings or something. Then say, hey, we want these packages. Okay, so that's what is going to happen here. We're going to build it, and then we can publish it. So this creates the DLLs. Awesome. Then we are going to .NET and then have our entry point as the build engine DLL, and this is going to be created from here. Okay, so that is the large scale of how we just get the compilation ran. Okay, so now once we actually start running the project, what are we running? Okay, that is here. So let's start to actually look at this. Bid engine HTTP, okay, program.cs. So we're gonna come here, and this is, remember how we were looking at I think I can actually just get rid of this part. This is the standard like C# boilerplate that they give at the beginning of when you do a like .NET an init or whatever it is, when you initialize your .NET project. Okay, so now I guess the question is, I have my global.json here, and SDK, okay. All right. So, okay, my program.cs. So now this is what is going to first be ran when I run my .NET project that I've compiled. Okay, so let's look into this. We come here, we get this web application. So this is a .NET library, standard .NET library, and we're creating this object called builder. Then we are doing a connection string. So get connection string default connection. Was this part of that settings? We have default connection, okay? I know about this, but I also know from our Docker, was it Docker file? No, Docker compose, I think. We have connection string default connection. Okay. So we have this. And now default connection. Okay. I also see Redis. And if nulled, it's here. Okay. So let's come to Copilot and say, here is my program.cs inside of my, what was it called? BidEngine folder. BidEngine folder. Paste it. Okay. Then I say, I am wondering how these lines of code interact with my Docker compose file and my app settings.json file. I am noticing that I have, then I will copy and paste what I have here. Oh my goodness, this is so slow. Oh my goodness, okay. Is it on my end or their end? I don't know, because when I type here, right, like, there's no lag. But when it's here on their platform, it is laggy, laggy, laggy. I might have to, I don't know if I need to start a new conversation, but okay. And like this, go to my Docker Compose and paste this. Like, is the context window too big, or I mean, it's not generating new tokens at this point, so I don't know why. I don't know. So I am noticing that there are two things which specify that we are having the Postgres connection and the Redis. So how does my C# actually get come on. I like how it saw that I made the mistake. So I did the at, and then it goes back and, okay. Actually get the connection strings. Okay. So while it's doing its thinking, I'm going to take a little coffee break, and actually I'm going to drink my water because every time my leg hits this thing, it starts to splash around. I need to rotate this desk. It's in the wrong configuration. Okay. So we come here and we get this connection string. So builder, it's the same thing. Configuration, same thing. Get connection string. So what I think this get connection string method is doing is just going into our settings or like metadata of this project and finding whatever default connection is. So I come here and I see, oh, default connection, and it's a string. This is just a string. And then it takes that string and puts it in there, which actually makes sense because this is default string, okay? So then we can come in here, okay? Builder services, add DB context, and then we put this string into the connection for which SQL database we're going to be using, right? So we are going to be using Postgres, port here, database, there, ID, okay? Here. And now we do the exact same thing, but for Redis. So I come here and I look at Redis right there. And notice this is capital R. Oh, that's capital R too. Okay. Okay, so it does match. And then I get this string right there, Redis and the port number. And if it's null, if this connection string is null, then we do this, and that's the exact same thing that we would have gotten anyways, and then we connect to Redis with that string. Okay, so we've now, and then we build Redis. Okay, so now we have connected to our Postgres database and our Redis database, supposedly. Another thing that I don't quite know is I don't know how we're actually doing that connection. I know that we have stuff up here, which is like Postgres, and we can, like, here's our password, right, which matches up to that string. Container name, adds DB, volumes. Okay, so this is where Postgres itself is going to be storing data. Okay. And I also vaguely remember doing like a startup script. Infrastructure, database. So we have this. Okay. So we created these tables, and this is in infrastructure, but oh my goodness. Create. Like, where do we actually run that? I thought we did an actual script to... Oh, that doesn't look like it. Oh yeah, and tests. We also don't have any kind of like unit tests or anything for what we're doing. That's fine for right now. So yeah, I'm not sure how... this entire thing actually translates into us being able to successfully do things. So I know that okay, that makes sense because we saw that up there when the Postgres was being initialized. Adds DB, so this makes sense. Okay, so we're just passing in these parameters. User ID, do we see a user ID up here? No, we see Postgres user. Okay, fine. It's Postgres. Password is Postgres. So yeah, and how does it actually know? I guess because we're using Docker Compose, so it's able to kind of match them together. But that's another question that I have is how do you actually match these containers together? I know that Docker Compose deals a lot with that, but... Okay. So awesome. We have this, and now we are creating Swagger. That's whatever controllers. So that's setting up the endpoints, right? Add scope. So campaign cache, bid selector, and budget service. All of these are like bid controller is not there. Bid request, nope. Campaign cache, so where are we even adding that? Is it here? Okay, so here are the three services that we're adding. Campaign cache, budget service, and bid selector. So we wrote these a little while ago, maybe like whatever, 5 days ago. So we're letting the builder know about their existence, I think, and then building it. Okay. And then running it. Okay, so when we do app.run, I think what this does is just sets up a listening application because we defined it as such up here, web app. So now we have exposed the controllers and the endpoints, okay, and all of these. So this is going to be my next question is kind of how does this do its job? First, we need to look at what's going on here. The other question that I'm trying to ask is, okay, once I'm ready to actually start compiling my project, what am I even looking for? Like, what is it supposed to be doing? That's a good question to ask, right? Okay. So, what did I even ask? Okay. Right, the connection string. So, you've got two sources of configuration, app settings inside of my project, environment variables injected by Docker Compose. So yeah, there's two things. I have my app settings.json, which is living in my project, and then I'm also injecting environment variables from Docker Compose. Okay. So, configuration system, the .NET Core configuration system merges these together into a hierarchy of precedence. So there's which ones take precedence over the other ones. When I call connection string, builder configuration, get connection string, this looks for a configuration key named configuration default connection. Okay? Configurations. Yeah. The source checks in order of precedence environment variables. So that means the Docker Compose one is going to be first. Second is command line arguments. Third one is app settings. Okay. Third one is this other one, user secrets and dev defaults. Okay. How Docker Compose injects values. So, environment, connection string, default connections, and we have this right here, Redis connections here. Docker Compose sets these environment variables inside the container. .NET Core automatically maps connection string default connection to connection strings default connection. Okay. Same for this. So I just get that. Okay. Now app setting.json provides default for local development. So if I just go into my project and do like .NET run outside of Docker, it will then look at my local app settings, this one, and be able to get that. Okay, fine. Fine. I wrote this, it should be post. Okay. This is for default connection. Yeah. Did it include the... No, okay. Okay. And I see that Mr. Copilot is back around, so let's disable, whoops, Copilot. There we go. Okay, so there we go. Now I have this right here. That's not exactly what I was hoping to paste. I was hoping to paste these. Copy that. And paste it there. And then, can you explain how these lines of code will interact with my other folders and classes which I have already created? What does this change about the functionality of my what? Of my web app when I do app.run, like that. Okay. Oh my goodness, and it is still not done. There we go, finally. So I think we can press go and it will do its thinking. Okay. And then we build that app. Okay. I'm trying to figure out how do we how does it change the functionality of this object which we are building and then eventually running? And then from there, I need to figure out, okay, well, let's go back to our controllers and look at this and see the actual API endpoints that we're allowed to call, and then try to trace through how all of this is actually being like, and kind of walk through a event of hitting this controller API and requesting an add. So let's come back here and find our place. Come on. Okay, so these lines are the glue that connects the classes you've written in your other folders to the ASP.NET Core runtime. Okay, so yeah, this is how we connect them. So let's try to look at this and try to figure out, okay, well, how is it actually operating? Okay. So builder services, add scoped, and then campaign cache, bid selector, budget service. So those are our three. Those are our three separate classes that we've created, right? Like if I come here and I do services, we can see bid selector. So it's just a class, right? Like public class bid selector right there. It's one big class, okay? We're gonna have to go in and kind of understand how this is working again as well. So we did it, we wrote it line by line, but again, we were very focused kind of on the, what is each line doing, not really looking at it as a more holistic view. So we'll have to do that as well. Okay. Registers your custom classes with the dependency injection container. Add scope means create one instance per HTTP request. Okay. Sure. So we're creating a new object. We're instantiating that class each time we get a new HTTP request, okay? When a controller or other service asks for a campaign cache, bid selector, or budget service in its constructor, .NET Core automatically provides an instance, okay? So when a controller or other service, so we can actually come here and just go to a controller, right? Big controller, and where's its constructor, right? Like bid selector. So I'm creating this is the constructor. I want a bid selector. Well, how does it know? How does the runtime know what a bid selector object is? Well, we've defined it here, although I am noticing that our capitalizations are off. Where did it go? So, oh no, never mind. Bid selector and bid selector. Never mind, it's not off. Oh, right, I was looking at this one. This one's the variable, this is the type. Okay, so how does it know what a bid selector is? Well, that's because, and this is going to be dealt with from dependency injection. So here is where we actually tell the the thing which is doing the dependency injection, which would be the .NET runtime, which is kind of this builder object. We're telling it, okay, well, be aware that this thing exists, and that way my controller here, when it sees this, it can just spin up a new one, inject it in, and then I can grab it right there in my local here. Same thing with budget surface. So it's creating a new one every single time, which kind of makes me wonder, are we losing data? And what I mean by that is, like, budget service keeps track of how much money an advertising campaign has left to spend, but that is actually, it's actually kept track of in the database. So that's persistent memory. So that should be okay. And then I think what we're doing is just modeling that. I think what bid selector and all of those things, like budget service, all of those are just modeling what the tables are in the database. I remember we were doing stuff with that. Okay, so that's kind of how the dependency injection is working. Okay, so when a controller or other service asks for campaign cache, bid selector, or budget service in its constructor, .NET Core will automatically provide an instance, okay? How it interacts with your folder classes. You've defined these classes here, yes. By registering them here, you make them available for injecting anywhere in my application, okay? Yep, it looks very similar to this. So when .NET Core creates bid controller, it sees the constructor parameters and asks dependency injection for those services. Because you've registered them, the container knows how to build them. Okay. Your controller doesn't need to manually new these classes. It gets injected automatically with their dependencies. So do you guys remember in my other videos when we were actually writing this out line by line by line by line, and I said, you know what, I'm going to ignore dependency injection for now. I'm just going to take it on blind faith that we will learn about it later. And once we've written the project, once we have the project in its entirety, we have all of the other components, right? Like whatever, the analytics service, ad service, but once we have the project in its entirety, then we will be able to much more easily understand what dependency injection actually is, where it's coming from, how it's working, and not just continually looking at theory and trying to understand what's going on. Now we're at the point where we actually are able to understand dependency injection, and it's making a lot more sense. Okay, well, I have this object here, and I'm kind of telling the runtime, like, oh, well, these classes exist. Therefore, if you see one of these classes within your constructor, instantiate it yourself and put it in there, the constructor, and then I'm able to grab that, essentially. So now, okay, well, this is exactly what I was meaning by I think it's going to be a lot better for me to ignore it at that time, move on, and just learn it later. And now later has come, and I was correct that, yeah, it is a lot easier when you do things in the correct, like not just spinning your wheels. So I just want to make a note, because I'm also trying to analyze myself and understand my own, like, what is the best way to learn, and how do you build a project so that you move quickly, learn quickly, don't get stalled, all of those things. So trying to take note and verbally articulate where I do things good and where I make mistakes, and how I can improve that process and move faster and not get stalled. So Okay, that's just one observation that I've made. Okay, so now builder services add controller here. So what are we doing here? Registers support for model view context, model view controllers. I don't know. But MVC, that is the thing that we have like models right there and views, which I don't think we have, but views are kind of like the HTML and CSS and all of those stuff. Okay. And then controller or context, I forget what that C is for, but the entire thing is kind of for a REST API thing, project, or like whatever it's called. Application, container, thing. That's it. There we go. Okay. So register support for controllers, API controller classes. So we have the API controller classes, and we come here, we use that controller, API controller, controller base. Does it look specifically for a controller's location? So this tells .NET Core to scan your project for controller classes. So look in my entire project. Okay. Bid controller in your controllers. Okay. Okay, hold on. Bid engine. CONTROLLERS. Okay. Cool. There we go. So I think it is looking for this tag right here. And in Java, I remember we were doing things which were like we would have oh, hello there. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, so I am back and it is morning. So I guess we're doing both experiments in the same video. So before and after. Guess we're gonna combine them into the same one. Okay, so let's come here and make myself a little bit smaller and just start looking where we left off. So we have these controllers. Okay, sure, we have a controller. And now what am I going to want to try to do? I'm going to want to try to be able to hit this API endpoint and ask for an add. High level, that's what I am attempting to do with this entire project. So I need to be able to try to map out how does it go from one of these API endpoints to actually creating and interacting with the database and then returning back an add object. So I'm looking here, I see two API endpoints, one there and HTTP post here, okay? And they're both inside of this bid controller class. So I think if I do API and then somehow controller, I don't know how we're actually going to hit that endpoint. That doesn't quite make sense, but it seems like something is put in here as a variable. If I do a post, it's going to hit this. Okay. So let me come here and look about what we even have. So we have these variables here: bid selector, budget service, and logger, okay? Private static, so we have a counter, histogram. So these are for measurements, I remember that. Here is our bid controller class, and we just inject all of those. And this is working in conjunction with this program CS. So I want to find out how does this, or both of these two, interact with bid controller. So copy that. Oh, I guess we didn't even finish reading all these. Apologies. So registers support for model view controller. Okay. Interaction. This tells .NET to scan my project for controller classes. Here, it wires them into the routing system so that when you hit API bid, the right controller method is executed. So follow-up question number 1, what would happen if we had multiple controller files? How would this impact the statement, these two statements? Okay. Here. So that's our first follow-up question. So now, Builder Services add endpoint API Explorer. What does this do? It adds metadata about your API endpoints. This metadata is used by tools like Swagger, OpenAPI to generate documentation. Okay. It doesn't change any runtime behavior. Okay. So now, this is the one that actually adds the controllers in it. Okay, so this is the important one. And did it say that we create a new bid controller object every single time? Does this mean we create a new bid controller object every single time? Okay, so I'm gonna have to like try to start a new chat or something with this because it look at this. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's see if we can actually just do that. Okay, Copilot. Okay, this is not laggy. So we're gonna start a new chat. I'm gonna press enter just so that we can see this. Or let's continue and then go to this one after. Okay, so Swagger generation, add Swagger API. So this just starts up Swagger. Okay. What changes when you call app.run? Before app.run, you've only registered services and middleware. App.run starts the web service and begins listening for HTTP requests. When a request comes in, .NET Core creates a scope for the request. When a request, it initiates your controller, or instantiates your controller, injecting the scoped services, campaign cache, bid selector, and budget service. So that, I think definitely we are doing brand new classes for campaign cache, bid selector, and budget service. But I think what's going on is it is okay that we are doing so because they are only referencing the real data, which is in the database. That's the persistent. But then this kind of makes me wonder, like, why do we even do a Redis cache if every single time we just create a new object? So it's never going to have a cache hit, right? Okay. Number 3, if we are creating new objects every single time we hit an endpoint, then why would we have a Redis cache? It seems that we would always have a cache miss because we are just initiating the object. And then I have a random U at the, awesome. Okay. So let's do that. Read these, and then we'll move to our new chat here. Does this one even have my old ones? It does have my old ones, but okay. So if I'm on my big controller, post API bid. Okay, so that's how we get here. It is a post to this. Evaluates all active campaigns and returns the winning bid. So it's a promise, action, result, okay? And then for type bid response. And then we get the body, and that's part of request. So multiple controller files and add controller. Okay, what happens? Tells .NET Core to scan your assembly for all classes that inherit controller base or are decorated with API controller. Okay, so we're looking for things that inherit from controller base here or are decorated with this API controller. So this one is both, okay? If you have multiple controllers, they are all discovered and registered automatically. You don't need to call add controller for each one. Okay. And so then my application knows about these endpoints, and when I try to hit them, it will be able to route it to the correct location. So do we need to create a new big controller object every time? Yes, controllers are created per request by default. Controllers are lightweight orchestrators. They depend on services like bid selector and budget service that are injected. So, okay, yeah. Benefit no risk of leftover states between requests. Thread safety is guaranteed because each request has its own controller instance. Now, my question now would be, why do we have Redis then? Why have a Redis cache if objects are recreated? This is the subtle but important distinction, okay? Redis is an external and persist. Oh, okay. So this is also like a oh, I see. Yeah, I forgot about that. Redis is also a database. So I was thinking of just the Postgres database. So let's just read this and then we will be able to understand it more fully. So controllers and scoped services are recreated per request. Yes, that means that object instances are new each time. Correct. So all of those controllers and all of those models and everything is new. The bid selector, this is a new bid selector, this is a new budget service, and this is a new logger every single time we hit an endpoint. But they don't hold global states themselves, they are external stores. Redis is an external store, or Redis is external and persistent. Redis runs on its own service, and in my case, it's a container. It holds data in memory across requests, across controllers, yes, and across users. Even if you create a new campaign cache object per request, that object connects to the same Redis instance. That makes sense. So the cache outlives the controller. Okay. Request number 1. Bid controller is created. It asks campaign cache here. Queries Redis. Redis returns the actual cache. A new bid controller is created. It asks a new campaign cache. That object connects to the same Redis. Yep. Okay, so now we kind of understand that. So we're doing a post. We get the user ID. And this is going to be part of, what do we say, the body? So there's going to be something called user ID within the body of this post request. Is this a post like get add thing or what? Bid request total with labels invalid if there's no ID or no placement ID, okay? Then select winning bid async. So this is what we were doing. We built out this function, and then we're gonna look at this soon. But I'm just going to say, okay, we get back, I believe this is an object which returns a ad, a specific ad. Does this give any details? This one. Okay, so it returns a promise which resolves into a bid response. Okay. So this is going to be a bid response here. We check if it's null. If it is null, because notice we said that it could be null. Right there. If it is null, then we say no content and just return. Now, what we need to do, we have our ad that we are going to display to the user. We then go to the budget service, which is a different service. Bid selector service, budget service, and campaign cache, okay? Those are the 3 things that were injected, remember? And we are going to put in the campaign ID of the winning bid and the bid price for that winning bid, and we're going to deduct that from the budget. So now budget deducted, and we check, what is this? This is probably returning a Boolean if it was successful. If it was not successful, we exit out, okay? And then we increment the total number of bid requests that we have tried to process. We do calculations for latency, okay? And then we return status okay with the actual winning bid here. And one of the things that I have not looked at all is, okay, well, from the client side, how are we actually rendering this? But I don't think we care about that right now. I think our scope of responsibility as it stands right now is to simply serve the metadata for the ads, not actually populate the web page. I think that that will occur because I was looking this up when I was coming up here to Seattle. I was on the train, and so I was able to just go on to ChatGPT and ask some more questions. And one of the things that it was, or that I was investigating was, how does an ad actually get rendered? And what it was saying is that the JavaScript from the client side is going to go and actually request that ad. And then once you request the ad, it's going to render onto the web page. And so that responsibility actually falls outside of my project's scope. Now, it would be nice to go in and understand that and get an even more holistic understanding of the entire pipeline. I want to do that, but I also want to be a little bit focused. And so right now I'm going to be satisfied by saying this isn't within the scope of the current project. Okay, so I return this, which means if my project is working, I can do a post to this with the appropriate body, and I need a user ID and placement, okay? And then I also need to see what requirements request has in here. And then I should get back a 200 response with a body of a winning bid. I think that's what's happening. I think that that is the way that I can test, is my project actually working? Now let's go in and get an understanding of this select winning bid. Okay, so I have this request and I need user ID and placement, which we already have. User ID. Okay, so that's what it looks like we need for the body. So now what do we... Coming in here, get active campaigns. So this is going to... Where's the... So we have a dependency injection for this. So when we trigger that we need a bid controller, we are going to come in here and it's going to trigger this bid selector here. And then when we inject it, we're injecting it right there. So the runtime creates a bid selector, but then when it creates a bid selector, it also creates a campaign cache. So it creates both of those at the same time, and I don't need to do anything. Dependency injection, okay? So So now I have a cache, which is of campaign cache. Okay, now that means I have, would it be data? No. Models? I have a campaign cache here. Now when I create a campaign cache, what does that do? It will create a database context for SQL, app DB context. No, DB here is going to be Redis, this one is going to be SQL, and then logger is logger. Okay. So now I have access to all of this, which will attempt to communicate with Redis, right? Okay. Where am I? Campaign cache here? Okay, I kind of lost where I'm at. Bid selector, was I down here? Select winning bid. I'm gonna get the active campaigns from the cache right there. Okay. So I get all of the active campaigns. If there's no active campaigns, I am going to return null. So I'm going to create an empty list for campaigns. And okay, so campaign, this is an object, which it should be in models, right? Campaign.cs, yeah. So here's what a campaign is, right here, and it models the SQL structure. And then I think Entity Framework will take this and actually do the translation to SQL. Public class add, okay. Targeting rules. So these are the different tables or entities within my SQL. What is this? Bid request. So this is what's coming into as a bid request. Bid response, add content. I think this is what I'm returning back. Okay. So I go through all of the active campaigns and I check if I can serve them. If they are, I am able to add them to the campaign or eligible campaigns list. Okay. So then we order by the campaign CPM, campaign CPM bid, right? And then take the highest earning one. That's winning campaign. Then we get the ad. Here. Selected ad, we just get one of those campaign ads, okay? So list of ads here, and so I just grab one, okay? And then we return it. Yeah. So how can I keep investigating this? I mean, do we do we now go in and try to look at the models and understand that more, or AppDB context? So what are we doing here? Options, okay. So this is how we're mapping all of the tables, right? On model creating. This entity has an ID, has a name. Okay, so we're building campaign here. And we're setting up all of the columns in the table right there, and all of the foreign keys here, and all of the indices or indexes. And then for ads, we're able to do the same thing, set up all of the tables, or columns, I mean, set up the index, and we don't need to specify the foreign key anymore because it's already kind of there. And then we do the same thing here. Okay, so AppDB context should be the thing that's actually doing the connection between the databases, right? Or like using Entity Framework to do the translation, I should say. And this models campaign, this is just simply a class. That's it. What's in properties? Okay. Yeah, that's fine. What is this one? Okay, that's controllers, yeah. So back to all of the high level stuff. We have our services. These are the things that get added to the runtime context. We have our controller, which also gets added as a controller to the runtime context. Every time we hit an API endpoint, we create a new object here, which injects, does dependency injection to create all of the other things, that services that we already added to the runtime context, so the runtime context knows how to create them. These are going to be responsible for actually like creating the methods or the functions or the actions which are required to do the processes necessary to create or to find an ad that we want. To do this, we need to create a class. We need to have classes that represent the tables in the database and the responses which we are going to give. That's in models. That's why we're in models here. But now I need some way to actually determine how does this campaign, how does it actually, like, where is this AppDB context? Can I do like find all references here? So that's it. Okay, that that was very that's awesome. That's unhelpful, but okay, fine. Like where then how do we actually use this? How is this even used? I have no idea. I have no idea why or how this is used. I know it's setting up the databases with the table, but I don't see how. I know I said that I was going to change to a different window, but this one actually has all my context. So I'm going to say if I have not created some of the services which will be spun up when I create the Docker Compose, is there a way to I don't know what I want to do. I just want to do Docker Compose up, and I think I'm just gonna try to maybe comment like event consumer out. Comment things out of my Docker Compose as I don't have them right now. Okay. So we can do that and then possibly just comment this out and see. It's not going to work. Maybe I do that in the next video. Try to figure out how to comment these things out. Okay, so yeah, I think we got to a stopping point now, which is we kind of have an idea of how these different components are playing together. I'm not quite confident in it, to be honest. I don't exactly know how everything is going together, but I think what I'm going to do is move on to try to start it up in the next video and see all of the problems that we get and then try to hit the problems one by one to understand what the problem is, why we're getting it, and then we'll be able to explore this project even more through the troubleshooting phase. So if that's interesting, subscribe to this channel. I'd love to have you along for the journey. My name is Timothy Lee Grant, and I'll see you guys in the next video.